A retired teacher in Ohio paid full price for a brand new laptop. She owns it outright. She does not want a Microsoft account. She never had one. She never needed one. She just wants to turn the computer on and use it, the way she has been using computers for 30 years. But Windows 11 will not let her proceed. The setup screen demands an internet connection. It demands a Microsoft account. It will not accept no for an answer. There is no skip button. There is no bypass option. There is no local account path anywhere on the screen. The laptop sits there, brand new, paid for, and locked by Microsoft itself. This is the result of a 4-year campaign Microsoft has been running quietly in the background, removing every door that leads away from their ecosystem, one update at a time. In June 2026, they closed what many considered the last reliable one. But the community found something. There is a fix that still works right now. And there is one detail about how Microsoft justified closing these doors, a quote they put in writing that tells you everything you need to know about where this is heading. I will read you that quote later in this video, word for word. When you hear it, you will understand what this company thinks of your right to use your own machine. Since 2022, 100% of new Windows 11 home installations have required a Microsoft account and an active internet connection to complete setup. Not most installations. Not installations where you chose the cloud option. Every single one, by default, with no opt-out presented on screen. That is a design decision applied universally to the most widely used consumer version of Windows. And Microsoft has been tightening it ever since. In March 2025, they removed a script called bypassnro.cmd from Windows 11. This was a command line tool that had been sitting inside the operating system itself, a tool that bypassed the account requirement during setup. Microsoft removed it and issued a statement. The statement said, and I am quoting directly, that the removal was to ensure all users exit setup with internet connectivity and a Microsoft account. Not some users, all users. That phrase is deliberate. That is corporate language with a meaning, and I will come back to it. By October 2025, with the 25H2 update, 2 more community-discovered bypasses stopped working. The bypassnro command that tech forums had been sharing for months was neutralized in newer builds. The CXH local-only workaround vanished. Every time the community found a window, Microsoft closed it. Then came June 2026. Multiple independent reports confirmed that on freshly installed systems, the bypassnro command no longer functions. The setup wizard will not proceed without a network connection. This is not about destroying local accounts. Local accounts still work perfectly once Windows is installed. You can create them, switch to them, and use them as your primary account today. What Microsoft killed is your ability to create one at the moment of setup, when you first turn on a machine you own and paid for. The restriction is surgical. It is targeted at one specific moment, and that specificity tells you a great deal about why they are really doing this. That reason is not the one they gave publicly, and what they said in writing is more revealing than anything I could tell you. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to 2015. That was the year Microsoft made Windows 10 a free upgrade for anyone running Windows 7 or 8. At the time, the tech press celebrated it as a gift to consumers. What it was, for Microsoft, was a land grab. Satya Nadella had taken over as CEO the year before, and he was repositioning Microsoft from a company that sold software licenses to a company that sold subscriptions and services. Windows was not the product anymore. Windows was the pipeline. The product was Microsoft 365. The product was OneDrive. The product was the data that flows through connected accounts. For that model to work, Microsoft needed accounts. They needed users tied to an email address, connected to a cloud service, generating usage data, and renewing subscriptions. A local account user, someone who logs into their own machine with a password they chose, is invisible to that model. They do not generate subscription revenue. They do not feed usage analytics. They are, from the perspective of Microsoft's current business model, a loose end. So the campaign began slowly. Windows 10 made Microsoft accounts optional, but prominently recommended. Windows 11, launched in October 2021, made them mandatory for the Home Edition from day one. The bypass removals followed, each one documented in Section 2, each one accompanied by a Microsoft statement framing the removal as a benefit to users. The phrase the tech press started using in 2025 and 2026 to describe this approach was dark pattern design. It is a term borrowed from the world of user experience. It describes interface choices deliberately engineered to push users toward an outcome that benefits the company rather than the user. Hiding the opt-out. Removing the alternative. Making the default the only visible option. What happened in June 2026 was not a new policy. It was the latest chapter of one that started a decade ago, and the people who felt it most were not power users with command line tools. They were ordinary users who just wanted to turn on a computer they owned. The turning point, the moment that changed the technical reality on the ground for everyone trying to preserve a local account, came from a developer in France who has been fighting this battle for years, and what he built may be the most important tool in this story. His name is Pete Batard. He is the developer behind an open source tool called Rufus, and if you have watched this channel before, you have heard his name. Our Rufus video has been watched 145,000 times, and the reason it resonated is the reason Batard builds what he builds. He believes users should control their own machines. Rufus is a utility that creates bootable USB drives for installing Windows. It has been around since 2011. It has been downloaded hundreds of millions of times. And starting in 2022, Batard began adding something to it that Microsoft had not anticipated, a built-in option during USB creation that modifies the Windows installer itself, removing the requirement for an internet connection and a Microsoft account before it ever runs. Microsoft could not simply patch Rufus away. It is not part of Windows. It runs before Windows is installed. Every time Microsoft closed a bypass inside the operating system, Batard studied the change and rebuilt the workaround for the next Rufus release. On June 18, 2026, days after the June update broke the most widely used existing bypasses, Batard pushed a new Rufus beta. It reintroduced a working workaround for the June changes. He confirmed it publicly. Users tested it. It worked. But Batard also said something else on June 18th that matters more than the fix itself. He said, "This game cannot go on forever." He was not being dramatic. He was being precise. Every workaround requires reverse engineering a new Microsoft restriction. Every new Windows build can break what the previous Rufus version fixed. There is a technical ceiling to how long any community tool can keep pace with a corporation that controls the operating system at the source code level. That is the reality you are now living in. The fix exists. It works today. But the person who built it told you himself that this is a finite situation. The question I planted at the start was whether a fix exists. There is one, and I will walk you through all 4 methods in the next section. But the deeper question, the one that should be sitting with you right now, is what happens when the last fix stops working. Because Pete Batard already gave you his honest answer. And Microsoft's behavior over the last 4 years gave you theirs. The Rufus fix is the headline, but there are 3 other methods still working as of this month, and if you are setting up a new machine right now, you need to know all of them before you start. Because once Windows connects to the internet during setup, the window can close permanently on that installation. The second method requires no tools at all during setup if the machine has never connected to a network, never plugged in an Ethernet cable, never joined a Wi-Fi network. The local account option still appears. Community testing across June 2026 installations confirmed this. The critical phrase is never connected, not disconnected partway through. Never connected at all from the moment the machine first boots into setup. If the system touches a network even briefly, the local account path can vanish from that installation for good. Unplug the Ethernet before you start. Do not join Wi-Fi when the setup wizard asks. Complete the full setup offline. Then, connect afterward. The third method is for advanced users and should be treated as fragile. During Windows setup, before you reach the account requirement screen, press Shift and F10 simultaneously. This opens a command prompt. From there, you can manually create the bypass NRO registry key. Independent testing in forums, including Ideas Awakened and the Windows Community Forums, shows this still functions on some builds, though Microsoft can, and likely will, ignore this hook in future updates. It is a backup, not a primary solution. If you are not comfortable with a command prompt, use Rufus. The fourth method is specifically for people who already have Windows 11 installed and want to protect themselves before the next major update. Go to Settings, then Accounts, and create a secondary local administrator account now. This gives you a local fallback that survives even if your Microsoft account sign-in is disrupted. You already have Windows running? Use that window while it is open. If you are still running Windows 10 right now, your end of support date was October 2025. That date has passed. Microsoft is no longer issuing security updates for Windows 10, which means hundreds of millions of users globally are facing a forced choice: upgrade to Windows 11 and face this account requirement at setup, buy a new machine and face the same thing, pay $30 a year for extended security updates Microsoft began offering as a paid subscription, or find a different path entirely. The community that built the Rufus workaround, that mapped every bypass and documented every closure, has been pointing toward that different path for years. And the story that kept them motivated, the one that puts a human face on what Microsoft's campaign costs real people, is the one I promised you at the start of this video. The retired teacher in Ohio was not an isolated case. Across Windows community forums, Reddit threads, and tech support boards throughout 2025 and into 2026, a consistent pattern emerged. The people getting caught by this restriction were not power users. They were not people who had made a choice to avoid Microsoft accounts and researched how to do it. They were ordinary users, retired professionals, people setting up a machine for an elderly parent, small business owners buying a new laptop, who simply sat down to use a computer they had purchased and found that Windows would not proceed without something they did not have and had never needed. A thread shared widely in early 2026 on both Reddit and the dev community captured it clearly. A man named David was walking his elderly mother through a new laptop setup remotely, by phone. She did not have a Microsoft account. She did not have a secondary email address to create one with. She did not understand what OneDrive was or why the screen was asking her to agree to share her files with a cloud service she had never heard of. There was no local account option visible anywhere on the screen. The setup screen required an email address to proceed. The only other path was to create a Microsoft account, which itself required an email address, a phone number for verification, and agreement to Microsoft's data collection terms. She was not being paranoid. She was not being obstinate. She had used computers for 20 years without any of this. David eventually created a throwaway Microsoft account just to get the machine past the setup screen. His mother now has a Microsoft account she did not want, linked to an email address she does not use, with OneDrive enabled by default, syncing her documents to Microsoft servers without her fully understanding what that means. That thread was not unique. It was one of dozens following the same pattern from the same period, describing the same experience across the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. Different names, different cities, same screen, same outcome. That is what dark pattern design means in practice. It is not a buzzword. It is an elderly woman on the phone with her son, trying to turn on a computer she bought, discovering that the company behind the operating system had quietly removed every path that did not pass through their ecosystem. And here is the thing that should sit with you. She did not do anything wrong. She followed the instructions on screen. Those instructions were designed deliberately by engineers at a company that knew what they were doing to leave her no other visible choice. The question this raises is what you do when the company that controls your operating system decides that your choice is no longer a variable they want to account for. That question has an answer, and it is not a bypass command. Here are the two futures, honestly speaking. In the first one, Pete Batard keeps pace. Rufus continues to be updated. The no internet method continues to work. The community continues to document every bypass that survives each new Windows build. Microsoft continues closing doors, and the community continues finding windows. You stay on Windows 11, you use the tools, you manage the friction. For many people watching this video, that is a workable situation, for now. But here is what that future requires. It requires you to check Rufus release notes before every new Windows installation. It requires you to know, before you set up any new machine, which bypasses are currently working and which were patched in the last 30 days. It requires staying engaged with technical communities that track this in real time. And it requires accepting that at some point, Batard told you this himself. The game ends. Not because the community gave up, because Microsoft controls the source code and you do not. In the second future, you treat June 2026 as the moment it became undeniable. Microsoft's June 2026 actions are not an isolated update. They are the latest point in a pattern stretching back to 2022. Each move follows the same logic: identify the remaining bypass, remove it, issue a statement explaining why removing it was good for users, wait for the news cycle to move on, repeat. The statement from March 2025, the one about ensuring all users exit setup with a Microsoft account, was not describing a technical necessity. Internet connectivity is not required for a computer to function. A Microsoft account does not make the hardware run better. What it does is connect you to a billing relationship, a data collection agreement, and an ecosystem you will find progressively harder to leave. The alternative operating system that has never once asked any user to sign in to use their own computer is Linux. It does not require an account. It does not require an internet connection at setup. It does not sync your documents to a corporate server by default. And in the last 3 years, it has become genuinely usable for the kind of everyday computing most Windows users do: web browsing, document editing, video watching, email. The master open loop from the start of this video was whether a fix exists. The honest answer is yes, and you will find every step in the description below, including the direct Rufus download link. But the more complete answer is that the fix is temporary. The company behind the problem has told you in writing what they intend, and a permanent alternative exists and is more accessible than it has ever been. So, here is the direct answer to the question this video set out to answer. As of July 2026, Rufus is the most reliable fix for creating a local account during Windows 11 setup. Download the latest Rufus beta, create your install USB, and select the option to remove the Microsoft account requirement before you run the installer. The no internet method still works on fresh installs if you never connect during setup. Both methods are in the description below with direct links. Use them while they work. But do not mistake a working bypass for a solved problem. Pete Batard built you a door. Microsoft is still building the wall.